Welcome, everyone, to another episode. Today, we'll talk with political scientist Sergio Fausto. He's the executive director of Fundação FHC, which is the Fernando Henrique Cardoso Foundation. And Sergio, thank you very much for your generosity and your time.
My pleasure.
Yes, and the idea is to speak to you about politics and the Brazilian democracy. Yeah, very easy topic,
Yeah,
right?
very
For
easy.
Sergio, can you tell us a little bit about Fundação FHC?
All right, the foundation was created by the ex-president of of Brazil, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, back in 2003, right upon his leaving office, right after two terms in the presidency, and the objective was twofold: to create a presidential library on a Brazilian scale, and a think tank.
Because most of our colleagues are US based
Right.
and we met studying at Harvard. So I wanted to start asking you, in comparison to the United States and our democracy versus the American democracy, what are our strongest virtues, so as to say, and our weakest
Right.
links, or
Right.
and
Let's
then
let's start on the positive side from the
yes,
Brazilian from
yes,
the Brazilian perspective. I think what it stands out in this comparison is that our electoral system, I think it's fair to say it's healthier, right? What do I mean by that? First, gerrymandering is something that will never happen here, given the rules that we have, right? So political manipulation of the political map is completely out of question here. It's business as usual in the U.S., right? And increasing by the minute, right? Just the recent decision by the Supreme Court to strike down one provision of the Voting Rights Act, make it even easier for the state assemblies to redraw
yeah.
the electoral map in order to favor now the Republican Party. So this sort of political manipulation of the political map doesn't exist here. It would be it's unthinkable here, right? Because the legislation does not allow that to happen. This is, I think, one clearly in our advantage. The second point is that we have an electronic voting system, which is nationwide. Right? The rules are the same; they apply the same in each state and municipality of Brazil. That differs completely from how elections are organized in the United States. And so the way elections are organized here, I think, makes it much more difficult to fraud elections and to raise preposterous claims that the election was stolen, that the election is rigged. It This kind of rhetoric, discourse, we have it here, right? We can talk about this later,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
The extreme right here mimics what the
yes.
extreme right does in the United States, right? But and some people believe I think it's important to say that according to polls, I remember polls that were conducted like a year ago, so
Yeah.
not far away, right? The distant past.
Yeah.
Like 40% of the Brazilian population do not trust our voting system, or at least they say so. And this is the result of 4 years of repeating and repeating and repeating that the system is not reliable. But this is clearly it's groundless. It's completely groundless. So it's even more preposterous here. This kind of thing. In the U.S., the fact that the system is organized on a state based with different rules, that makes room for more. It's more controversial. it's enough to remember what happened in 2000, right?
Yeah.
The Gore versus
Yeah.
Bush. The decision had to be taken by the Supreme Court. So the system here runs in a much more smoothly
Yeah.
way than the
Yeah.
United
And
States.
even the fact that our elections take place on a Sunday, or that people who
Oh, not
even,
to
right,
mention
not to
that.
me,
No,
yes,
not to
because,
mention
yeah,
that. It's a
yeah,
big day here,
yes,
right?
yeah,
So we can talk about the turnout later.
yeah,
I think getting out the vote even though here the voting is mandatory.
mm-hmm,
Uh, it getting out the vote is important for political party. Can make a big difference in the final results. But having said that, the fact that the elections take place on Sundays or a holiday, and
mm-hmm,
people like to vote.
yeah,
So we have a turnout of around 75, 80%
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
of
yeah,
the total voters
yeah,
allowed to
yeah.
vote, which
Because even
is
though it's mandatory, but the penalty is
the
a
penalty is
very
very low. The
low
financial
fine, yeah,
penalty is
but
very low.
yeah,
There are administrative penalties. For instance, if you're not okay with if you haven't
yeah,
voted regularly or
mm-hmm,
justified why you
yeah,
didn't, you cannot have a passport issued.
yeah,
But for 99%, I'm
yeah,
exaggerating, for
yeah,
90% of the population, this is not an issue to
yeah.
have a passport or not,
Yeah.
right?
Or you
So
pay the fine, and
the
then,
fine is
and the fine
ridiculously
is,
low,
yes.
and now you can justify why you're not able to
Yeah.
vote digitally online on
Yes.
the day of the
Yeah.
election. So
Yeah.
you are at home on the sofa watching TV, and you can justify,
Yeah.
and that's enough, right? And on the going back to the comparison, I think on the weakest point, one of the weakest points in the Brazilian democratic system, I think it's military civilian relationship. In the U.S., up until now, I think
Mm-hmm.
reasonably confident that it will remain so. The military know that the domestic politics is not their business, so they did not intervene. They did not interfere.
Mm-hmm.
While the historical track record here is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
There have been many military interventions along
Yeah.
our history
Mm-hmm.
after the inauguration of the republic, and just recently,
Yes.
2022, a coup d'etat failed, but it was orchestrated with the
With the military.
participation of
Yes.
high-ranking officials, right?
Yes.
So I think this is still a pending issue in here. It's not in the U.S.